Hello and welcome to today's coverage of Week 6 of the Louisville Cube League Season 4. Today we're going to be covering Bryan's draft of the Vintage Cube, following through the draft and deck building before watching 3 matches as we work to crown this draft's winner. If you are interested in hearing more about our season structure overall, be sure to check out the first video in the Season 4 playlist as it goes more in depth on the structure of the format and the league as a whole. But for today, let's go ahead and get into the draft with the rest of the commentary crew.
Hello, and welcome back for another Vintage Cube Draft. My name's Joey.
I'm Bryan.
And I'm Prose.
And we got a winner here on the top of the pack already.
Yeah, this pack has three bangers in my opinion. It's got Ancestral Recall, Broadside Bombardiers, and Urza. Obviously, want to cut above the rest.
Right. In this spot in draft, you're always hoping the next person is taking Broadside, which I think is fairly likely over Urza. So as many blue drafters as you have in Vintage Cube, it's nice if you're not immediately putting the drafter to your left into blue.
Yeah, I think that Broadside Bombardiers is better than Urza. That's kind of a controversial take. I don't know if that's 100% true, but
I think pack 1, pick 2, I might agree with you.
Yeah.
And for that reason, there's a couple pretty decent red cards in this pack that I maybe would be less inclined to take for exactly that reason.
Yeah, there's the Lelia and the Flame Slash. Obviously, Flame Slash, in my opinion, I'm like, that's a good card with Ancestral Recall. It's a 1-for-1 removal spell.
Yeah, there's decent blue cards, and then there's good lands that are blue.
Yeah.
Or decent red cards and good blue lands. So I think I'd take one of the lands here, but it looks like
I'm currently debating between I think Hallowed Fountain, Lelia, and Mishra's Bauble. Which I think that I have no idea what I actually picked here. I assume that I should pick Hallowed Fountain here. It's a really good card.
Yeah, I think it'd be Hallowed Fountain or Lelia for me, and yeah.
Yeah, I put them in order of what my thought was on the whole thing. Like, Lilia is a really good Magic card, even if I am setting my opponent to my left on red, which, like, if I'm doing that, I can also, like, cut them. This is a snap off from me here. I think I'm debating between some removal spells and a Lush Portico. And I take Pest Infestation, which I love that card. That card's awesome.
Right. Rough to pass it, as well as one of the lands that might be your splash into green, but still early in the draft.
Yeah. Here I'm looking at... Oh, there's a lot of good cards in this pack, I think. I think I'm sitting here looking at JVP and Savannah are like the main two ones. Like, if I take Savannah here, I'm like solidly able to splash white with whatever I'm doing. And I just really like the duels. The like untapped, like no shocks or anything. Like, just getting like a dual land is so powerful.
Right. Jace nice though. I mean, you already have Ancestral Recall. It's no time walk, but
yeah, rebuy a call feels great.
Right. When you have one of the two blue pieces of power, a call or time walk, we're excluding Spiral here, the Jace is definitely more appealing.
Yeah. And I decided to block the camera there for a decent bit, obviously. You know, I can't let anybody see my stack. Oh, this pack also has a lot of good cards.
Very good pack, yeah. Teferi, Mana Leak, both in colors that you already have fixing for. Blue, a color you're
there's
obviously
also
playing.
EI.
And still good green cards, talking about those green lands that might table, because if someone does take the Temple Garden, it seems less likely they will take the Savannah as well, just already having that connection for any of the fetch lands. So there's a chance that at some point it might be good to move in.
Yeah, I snap off this Arid Mace here. I took Mana Leak last pack, Mana Leak again, 1-for-1, you know, really good. I'm torn here between Breeding Pool and Arid Mace, actually. Like, but first fetch is like so good. Like,
yeah, you already have a land that it can fetch.
Yeah.
Right, like red doesn't feel open and green does feel open, so I think that just speaks to the strength of reading that at the table. that Breeding Pool even came close to Arid Mesa, because I agree in the dark, Arid Mesa is normally the better pick, and I still think I prefer it here.
Mm-hmm.
This pack, I think that I make a mistake here, actually.
Ooh.
I think that with having Ancestral Recall, taking Arid Mesa, having a Hallowed Fountain, I think that the correct pick here is not Force of Vigor, which would honestly might have tabled, but it's Omnath, I think, given the start that I have.
Interesting. I wasn't sure if you were going to say Omnath or Tameo.
I think that either of the 4-mana spells other than Force of Vigor would have been the play there, yeah. Because Tameo Rebuy A Call is still something, you know? But yeah, I take Spar's Headquarters. I'm solidly banned at this point, it feels like, and I have like all the fixing for it.
Still no white spells, but we're
No
very
white
well
spells,
set
but-
up for any of them, yeah.
Yeah. Here I take Stock Up. I'm just like, what if I only draw cards and counter spells? The Tribal.
Right. Of note, we're fresh back from an event where we had two friends doing very well with Stock Up and Standard. We got to see the strength of that card a lot the weekend before this draft, and it makes sense to try it out here. Just another card advantage spell for you.
Yeah. Here I feel like Flame Slash is a pretty good pick, but just get a removal spell. But I'm tanking a lot over this. There's a lot of good gold cards here that I'm debating between, and destroying the Vintage Cube in the process.
Yeah, Flame Flash would be a fourth color. I guess, again, we don't have any white spells yet, so we're not necessarily a white deck, but...
Yeah.
Right, but if you were considering that Omnath earlier, usually if there's not going to be multiple people at a table who want Omnath, so if Omnath does come back around, already having the Flame Slash, you meet some of the incentive already to go in that direction.
Yeah, but I decide that I already have some green cards that care about like mana and stuff, and then here's your favorite card, Joey, Oracle of Moldiah.
I do love an Oracle of Moldiah. It's not the 4-drop green creature I was talking about, but it is one I will gladly see here.
Yeah. And then, Haywire Might has a green mana symbol on it. There's a Nissa. Green is definitely open at this table.
Yeah, I think Nissa just doesn't get enough respect in our cube group. Nissa is so good.
Yeah, and being able to turbo it out is solid. I get a Deathrite Challenge, which is nice. I have a fetch already. So if I can get, more support for that, Deathrite's really good.
Yeah, very well equipped versus whoever picked that Urza as well. Pest Infestation.
Yeah, for sure. Force of Vigor.
And Haywire Might now.
Yeah, I'm definitely in a solid matchup against the Artifact player.
Which, not a terrible place to be in Vintage Cube. Man, Strip Mine, Fast Bond, and Time Twister in the same pack is just absolutely crushing.
Yeah, definitely unfortunate for me.
I kind of disagree, though, because I don't think I value Fast Bond that highly, so...
Of the three, Fast Bond is the most likely to table.
Yeah.
Especially, again, you said Nissa doesn't get enough respect in our cube group. I think that applies to
and
green
it's
spells
clear
as a
people
whole.
just aren't drafting green.
Right.
And Rain of Filth tabling tells me no one's on, like, mega combo, or at least not with black, so there's a chance that no one's in any of the decks that want the...
Twister.
Well, that want Crop Root, or that want Fast Bond.
Yeah, sure.
For sure. I am sitting here. I do have those 3 cards. Those are the thoughts,
Yeah.
like,
I think the pick is certainly one of the 3.
Yeah.
But which one?
Because, like, Bristly Bill is less good than Fast Bond, I think, or Strip Mine in the deck that cares about lands.
My thinking here would be that I'm not as excited about having this Fast Bond if I know that Strip Mine is gone. And Strip Mine is never tabling, right? So, like...
Yeah. There's like a 0% chance that Strip Mine tables versus like a 20 or 30% chance. I believe that this was a tough pick because there's a lot of good cards in this pack.
Man. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely loaded, which is unfortunate for me. I'm reading what Evora does because I have no idea what that spell does. I still don't.
What's the duel we keep flipping past in the pack?
Tundra, which is unfortunate. Yeah, but Comet is just such a busted Magic card. Like that card just like wins the game sometimes randomly.
Yeah, it is hard to say no to Comet, I think.
Yeah, here this is another tough one here. There's
Titania?
It's Titania in the front. There's also a Force of Will in this pack.
I think I'm maybe Titania's biggest fan, so
yeah, you're
to me it seems like an easy Titania, but
yeah, I'm getting blue spell count currently here because it's just like getting to be able to, now that I have Comet also and Nissa, being able to like force through a Planeswalker with Force of Will. But I end up going with Titania because I don't think that my deck is that combo-y to the point that I...
Well, especially, we just got a strip mine. We're maybe banking on getting a fast bond back. I mean...
And I think that after taking Comet, you're actually less likely to be able to support the Force of Will because you're already playing green spells and you're committing to having a decent white-red splash to support the Comet. So it makes Force of Will harder to support.
I snapped off this Gataxian Probe and then changed my mind here for a minute because I'm unsure. I think the Gataxian Probe is pretty nice. There's also like a Chain Lightning here and a Flame of Anor and a Questing Beast. There's like a lot of good cards here. I think that this was a bad pick. I'm gonna make the statement here. I probably should have taken Chain Lightning there.
I'm not sure at this point in the draft I like the red splash. So
fair.
I'd be afraid that the red spells don't make the deck in the end if the mana doesn't work out. So that would steer me clear of the Chain Lightning in your same position for this different reason, but
fair.
I think I agree.
Yeah, I just snapped off the fetch land here, but go ahead, Prose.
I was just going to say, I think I agree. I mean, I think you're totally fine if you end up with like a red land or two and have Comet in your deck. That's really all you need. You don't necessarily need to go any deeper on red than that to be happy. I can feel you thinking about Nadu here.
I am like, if I get the Nadu, I've got the Lightning Grease. And then there's also Badlands, which is just like it like turns Arid Mesa into a black land, turns Marsh Flats into a red land. Like, it's definitely, I end up going for it. I think the Nadu is like busted as hell, which
I like that. You don't have too many dead cards in your draft yet. So like if you end up not getting there on that, I think it's a worthwhile investment still. And a lot of the table has seen this Greaves already. And they didn't take it, which implies that Nadu's maybe still on the table.
Yeah, here I am currently debating between 6 and Tireless Tracker. And for some reason, I have Nate Stoyer in contention as well. But I end up going with Tireless Tracker. Just like Landfall. It's just a good card.
Right, already got a couple of fetches.
This pack sucks, if I remember correctly. There's just a Horizon Canopy. I guess I could take PO or Revoker.
I mean, I don't mind the mana getting a little better in this deck.
Yeah, for sure. Plus, Horizon Canopy has some combos.
Yeah, this would be our first green duel, I believe.
Yeah.
I guess it's
Spar's headquarters, but...
Oh, yeah.
And the fast bond came back.
Of course it did. Joey hates that card.
I'm saying that I would be surprised if there was someone else at the table that wanted it.
For sure. There's on average 0 to 1 people that want a fast bond.
Well, also, remember, you were arguing over it, Strip Mine, and Time Spiral. So if someone wanted it and Time Spiral, they would take the Time Spiral over it.
Time Twister. But yeah.
Time Twister, Joey.
Or Time Twister, sorry.
Here I'm debating splashing a Galv Blast, which is a sign of how bad the removal in this deck is currently.
I think Spellbomb's a fine compromise for that.
Yeah, I'm hoping that's 6 tables.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's a good combo with 6. There's a Flame of Anor and Otawara. I can play all 4 of the cards there, actually. I mean, I'm not going to play... It's no spoiler that I'm not going to play Survival of the Fittest in this deck. I mean, I guess it gets Titania, but...
I like Otawara. You don't have much removal or much interaction outside of Mana Leak, and
that's pretty much it. Unless you're an artifact deck, and then I've got you red to filth. Here I take loot. Yeah.
Bryan bravely trying out all the new cards in the cube.
Absolutely. Definitely. I am playing that card. It is in my deck. 100%. I take a Mishra's Workshop because I can't abide passing someone a last pick Mishra's Workshop.
Over a land that would have made your deck.
That's true, actually. Isn't that crazy?
The hate is strong.
The hate is strong.
All right. Well, another
Yeah.
pack full of good cards, but a outlier a bit with the One Ring.
Yep. Prose, after the draft, I come and stare at your pile of cards for a while here because I'm wondering what card I decided to take the One Ring over.
I was sitting there building my deck, and Bryan just walks over, says nothing, leans down, surveys my entire build, says, "Oh, okay," and then walks away. Very odd moment.
Yeah, I needed to know. I don't know why I couldn't remember what card I took the One Ring over, but it was birds.
Oh, after talking about the lack of removal, the Fractured Identity, a card that has fallen over the years, but looks pretty nice here, though plenty of removal options actually in this pack.
And I am taking Snappy like an idiot.
No, it makes sense. You're an A-Call deck. Like,
Yeah.
There's like 3 other good cards in that pack that I definitely wish I had taken it over. This is one of the picks that I was like dreading looking at.
Those 3 somewhat interchangeable though, right? So
Yeah.
if one of them comes back, like that's
Sure,
such a
yeah.
minor downgrade, it's worth it to get the Snapcaster.
Yeah. Here I'm like, is Spellseeker worth it off of Pest Infestation, Mana Leak, A-Call, Gitaxian Probe, pretty much.
That does sound nice. What are the other considerations? Fire Ice I kind of like.
Yeah.
Fire Ice, there's a land in there, I believe, a Surveil land.
There's an Elegant Parlor, which gets
Right.
fetched off of both of my fetch lands, which is nice.
It doesn't increase the colors they get, does it? Or
No, it doesn't.
does Marsh Flats already get red?
Actually, you're right. Marsh Flats doesn't get red. That is true. I do take Fire and Ice because I need a removal spell in this deck or I'm going to lose it.
Yeah, I like that call.
Oh, I was even wrong. That's so funny. The pack I was thinking of, Prose, is this pack. I was like, what did I take Library over? It was totally Birds of Paradise, but it was Wrenn and 6. I was torn between Wrenn and Library because they're both just so good.
With Strip Mine in your deck too. Well, in your
This
pool,
is such a hard pick. I think that this one also is a little off. Like, I think Wrenn and 6 Strip is just like insane. It just like ruins the game for some people in a way that like Library is like a long game thing. I just have like so much card draw also. I stock up, A-Call.
I think you've done a decent job of resisting the red splash up until now. And it's still not really an easy thing for you to do, so.
Yeah, for sure. The deck does not, like, if I had taken the bad lands, I think that modifies that decision a little bit because I have like better fetches for that.
Kitten and Coveted Jewel have been in this pack too, which is interesting.
That is true. Yeah, Kitten Coveted Jewel, a messed up combo.
Not when you have Pest Infestation, Haywire Might, and Force of Vigor.
It's less good of a combo against this specific deck. That is true. If anybody that I'm playing against casts, a Soul Ring or whatever, I'm happy. Which is a weird thing to say.
Sylvan Library, never a bad thing to have.
Yeah, double library. This pack, unfortunately, it just has so much stuff that I would play. It's got like 5 cards I would play, or 6.
I count one card that you definitely do not want, and that's it.
Yeah, there's Doomsday. This is me actually counting to see, can I get a wheel out of this pack? Because Doomsday is definitely going to be in this pack when it tables. Can I take a card that ensures that I actually get a card back out of all of this? I'm palming the whole pack, basically.
I think I'd have a hard time not taking Verge here. I think Epiphany is my top pick after Verge. That's the name of the card, right? I don't remember its full name, but
Occult
isn't it
Epiphany.
It's Occult Epiphany, yeah. Yeah, there's Occult Epiphany, Malevolent Rumble, Dak. I'm already splashing red, likely.
Without this Verge, maybe not.
I was going to say, I really like the Verge for that reason. Well, that's kind of
genius. What if I took Lotus Cobra instead with my 2 fetches?
That's true. Yeah. I mean,
Cobra
that
makes
is
red mana too.
fixing in its own right. Yeah. As well as
Yeah, and
ramp.
then there's me counting, validating that I will get none of these cards back. Second guessing
Green
this
was
pick.
so open in pack 1, and that pack had so many green cards in it. It's just so hard to believe there's not a green card left in it when it comes back.
I mean, that's true, but there will only be one card in that pack when it remains.
Oh, I thought it was going to be 2. My bad.
No, it's only one. Yeah, I'm currently evaluating whether or not the card Skull Clamp has any place in this deck. That already draws a million cards.
If we were going to play this Iconoclast, maybe, but that doesn't seem super likely at this point. But
yeah, there isn't really another card in that pack to play, is the main thing.
Right, and it is good if we do play the Iconoclast.
Yeah, for sure. I can't believe this Emrakul tables.
Yeah, that's wild.
That was the one thing that I was super confused about looking at this pack. Like none of these cards are really going to make my deck, I don't think. Like I'm like debating whether or not a shadowy Backstreet is worth it, which when I like don't have any black cards in my deck. So I'm pretty sure that rather than take a card out of this pack, I'm actually gonna like hate this Emrakul. Because I'm like, I just can't let like if there's like a breach player to my left or something, like I just can't let them get a 15th pick Emrakul. It's like disgusting. And then I there's also a Burst Lightning too, or not Burst Lightning's Tribal Flames. I think right. No, it's Burst.
No, that's Burst Lightning.
I think.
Yeah.
Since the red is suspect, if you weren't going to take the Sacred Foundry, I would take the Skyclave over. Skyclave was the card I was excited to see wheel, but at this point, the Sacred Foundry is more important.
Yeah, and then I get the Elegant Parlor. So now I just like really
never mind. The Skyclave was better.
The Skyclave was better. Yeah, it's an unfortunate scenario.
So 2 red sources now fetchable from each fetchable from both of our fetch lands, which is really nice.
Yeah, these fetch lands are ass though, as far as casting our primary spells. Like, I would have probably murdered somebody for a trop or something.
They can both get spars.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they both get blue off a Hallowed Fountain.
Right, so they could get untapped red, white, blue. Green is the only one that they are getting tapped. But we knew that from pack 1 because Temple Garden and Savannah and Breeding Pool were all in pack 1 and we didn't take them.
You're really, really tightly debating whether or not to take Cogwork Librarian or Sacha. A decision that definitely matters.
Hey, Sacha's a cool card.
That's true. Yeah, and of course there's my Doomsday. Unfortunate. There were so many good cards in that pack.
Let's take a look at the deck and see how it came together. One thing I wanted to ask, but didn't want to slow down the draft, you mentioned several times about looking for 1-for-1 trading cards after starting on Ancestral. In your mind, does the Ancestral start push you more towards looking for the fair decks interacting that way? Because I know for some people it pushes them the opposite direction towards a powerful card to find a bunch of combo pieces, pushing them more towards combo.
This was the thing that I wanted to talk to both of you about, actually. I was looking forward to this thing, actually. Is because my immediate reaction when I saw Ancestral Recall is, oh, I want a deck full of a bunch of 1-for-1s where I have I am not generating card advantage or generating a board state advantage and things like that. I'm answering my opponent's threats. And then I just at some point in the middle of the game, cast an Ancestral Recall, and then I just kind of win from that card advantage off of just a call. So my first thought when I draft Ancestral Recall is, oh, I want cards like Mana Leak. I want cards like Swords to Plowshares, more so than, oh, I want Underworld Breach and stuff like that. Even though Underworld Breach and Ancestral Recall probably go well together. My initial gut check is, oh, I probably am drafting a more fair deck when I have a call. I don't know if that's the norm or if I'm way off base, because I'm pretty new to cube drafting.
Well, in my opinion, I think A-Call and Time Walk both fall into the same sort of bubble for me, especially as a pack 1 pick 1, where I don't feel like you have to drive your draft in a specific direction. I think you can put those cards in literally any deck and they're gonna be excellent. So Some of the, like, if you pick one a Soul Ring or something, you might be more inclined to like push yourself towards more an artifact strategy. But I don't necessarily. What if I pick one an Ancestral Recall or a Time Walk? I don't necessarily feel the need to let them drive my draft. If that makes sense.
No, I get that. That makes sense. I mean, that is maybe that's the sort of thing that I need to take away, because that's what this draft ended up becoming. Was like, I think like pack like 1 into 2 into 3, those were all perfectly fine picks, but I think I spent a little bit too much time thinking about getting 1-for-1
I don't
action.
think that approach is necessarily wrong. I mean, I think that's a perfectly fine line of reasoning, building a deck around Ancestral Recall.
Right. To Prose's point, putting them in any kind of decks. If I was to build a control deck in Cube, because that is a supported archetype in the Vintage Cube, I'd be very happy to have Ancestral or Time Walk in my deck. So same thing here, playing green-blue lands, which is an archetype I like playing in Cube. Obviously, it's always going to be splashing all the other colors, but in my head, it's mainly a green-blue deck. I'm ecstatic to see Ancestral in the deck, so it's good to have, but it just was a thing that you mentioned several times I thought was an interesting standout discussion point.
For sure. Yeah. But no, I think that this deck turned out pretty decent. I think that it's like I said, I think that I am missing, like, if this deck had the Fractured Identity in it, I think that I would feel a little bit better about it, because I have like a haymaker that actually impacts the board in a pretty severe way to sort of build towards, with the 1-for-1 removal and all that jazz. Like, the One Ring is a really good card, Comet's a really good card, but like Fractured Identity, your opponent's 5-drop, like, and then refill with a call kind of wins the game.
What did we take over Fracture? I can't remember.
Not something good. No, I took Snappy. I took
that's
Snappy
right.
for
Okay.
a call. Yeah.
And then that pack did still wheel with the Skyclave, but at that point, again,
We needed the
Sacred
land.
Foundry had become more important.
Right.
Yeah.
It is unfortunate that neither of the kind of nobody else wants them Titania combo pieces came around. No sign of Zern Orb or Safekeeper during the draft, as far as I remember seeing.
Or a Crucible effect to go with our Fast Bond either.
Yeah, I didn't see. There wasn't any. The only lands like recursion was the Ren and 6, which didn't table, which makes sense. Ren and 6 isn't supposed to table, I feel like, a lot of the time.
I couldn't remember if the Room ever came around, because I'm not on the lookout enough yet for that card.
No, believe me, if the Room came
drafts.
around after I had Strip Mine Fast Bond, I would have known, because I would have taken it over pretty much anything, because that would have made the deck like more like capable against the unfair kind of stuff. Like Mass Land Denial is good.
Not seeing any of the Crucible effects, not seeing any of the land sacrifice effects just to make Titania a one-hit lethal, not seeing the Nadu to pair with the Greaves we took. There are a couple of things that normally in this archetype I would like to see, but the things you're getting off the splash with Comet and having the ability to draw all these extra cards to put into either of your Planeswalkers quickly, I think, is still a lot of strength.
For sure. Yeah. I think this deck is solid. 6 out of 10. The Ancestral Recall is really trying to drag it up, I feel like. But, that's how it goes.
Ancestral One Ring stock up, like, there's a lot of card advantage here.
For sure. Ooh, a Prof Eidetic Memory. That's what this deck wanted.
Ooh.
Love that card.
That we laughed about the Duelist of the Mind, but I don't think it would have been a correct pick over what you took over it, but it would have had some potential here, I think, as well. Yeah.
No, I think that card is awesome. That card plus Profs plus Time Twister, like.
Although I guess those cards have no actual synergy with stock up, so
that's true, because stock up designed in such a smart way to get around, Orcish Bowmasters of the world.
Well, yes and no. Stock up
happen.
sees an eighth of the deck, and there's a lot of cards in the deck that draw cards, so just gotta chain them together.
You'll probably find one of them.
Let's see what you do manage to find as we jump into the first game. Land decks are always really interesting to take a look at, so let's see how it unfolds.
Sure thing.
So, getting into the first match here, we've replaced Bryan from draft commentary with Scott.
Hey, how's it going?
And we have the first match here against Higgs. So, we know Bryan's on a 4-color lands deck. And Higgs waiting to see what he starts with here. Though Bryan, a fast start with Fast Bond.
Yeah, let's see how many lands he puts into play, though. The tap land leads me to believe that it's just one additional land this turn, and that'll be the end of the action.
Right. Not necessarily that it's the last land in his hand, but it's the last one that needs to come into play this turn for him to have an explosive turn next turn.
Yeah, agreed. Higgs with his own strong start with Ocelot Pride. Maybe the premier white 1-drop in the cube now?
Oh, I think it's hard to argue against it. I think that 1-drops have changed a lot over the years. I've been thinking about it recently, all the changes from what you'd normally only take if you were in the aggro deck to now everyone wants the cards. Just 1 land drop this turn into Fnatic. A little bit of retapping and then back over Fnatic. A decent roadblock that's going to stop the Pride from being able to get in. Ooh! This could be explosive. Okay.
Wow.
So, Bryan, assuming that he could stop the Pride short of a removal spell, but instead Higgs is going to gain 2, make a cat token, and threaten to make an Ocelot Pride token next turn, which math tells me would turn on the City's Blessing, but luckily we're not going to have
one of us
to...
can count that high, because that...
Well, it's going to be 4 lands, Pride, the enchantment, and a token, so that's 7. So the first... And the land coming into play, making another Pride, is 8. So maybe it's only the second one that would see the City's Blessing, but either way, don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, Bryan had his pest infestation, so go ahead and clean that up before we had to wade into that quagmire.
But yeah, there's the land, and yeah, would have been disastrous, because even with only 1 doubling, would have been another Ocelot Pride token, and yeah. Having watched the draft, Bryan wouldn't have had anything to do about it at that point. Again, the Nantuko making Ocelot Pride a 2/2 in a different way.
Yeah, and not the first strike on the Ocelot Pride means that there is not a clean block to take this thing down. Bryan could shove all 3 of his creatures in front of it, and the Pride would simply first strike damage the 2 pests out of the equation there.
Ooh, the One Ring going to shut down the Pride being able to make any tokens at least.
Yeah, and that on top of Fast Bond, it's a lot of damage you're doing to yourself. Save for this one turn, this would be a great turn for Bryan to play like 3 lands, but it is also a pretty powerful engine. The ring fueling your Fast Bond and letting you cast all of the spells that you've drawn.
Right, and I have always had faith with Fast Bond and the One Ring that unless you've taken a lot of damage, which thanks to Fnatic, Bryan has not taken any combat damage himself, I don't think it can kill you before you would win the game, or your deck just isn't capable of winning.
Yeah, if you have reasonable cards in your vintage cube deck, then you're probably gonna kill your opponent with some combination of them before you lose to your own cards.
And Higgs is here realizing that he wants to, since he's getting the Jace ability, put the token instead of on Ocelot Pride onto one of the tokens so that he can have multiple of that Jace activation. Maybe a reason for Bryan not to have surveilled the Jace into the graveyard. Even if it's not a card he wants, he's able to go through so many cards thanks to the One Ring that maybe it was worth drawing Jace, even if it is a dud, to stop Higgs' whole board from becoming looters.
Yeah, Higgs is really has been on the verge of doing very powerful things, and Bryan has been able to shut it down or at least put a temporary stop in play. But Higgs' deck is really putting on a show for us.
Here of Bladehold. So next turn's attacks are going to be quite big and difficult to block if Agatha's Soul Cauldron does get more food. Bryan takes the 1 off the ring down to 18. And here, we're going to see him draw a couple more cards.
Never a bad way to start your turn.
Hoping to see him chain several things together. We were talking about his other card advantage spells during the draft. He started it out with an Ancestral. If he can just start chaining some stuff together. Doesn't have any combos like we talked about, but still, if he could find Titania, she essentially pays for herself thanks to Fanatic then becoming Ferocious.
Yeah, and it really feels like this is the turn Bryan needs to do something impressive. With Higgs playing that hero Bladehold, and the ability to loot with at least 2 of his creatures on Bryan's end step. It kind of feels like Bryan needs to do something here now to stay in this game.
Well, that's not even touching on the fact that with the Ocelot Pride, which will be active next turn, presumably, we'll be doubling not only our cats, but also the hero Bladehold tokens.
Well, the hero token should be easy enough to block down. Agatha's Soul Cauldron does threaten to make that slightly difficult, but...
More of a quantity issue than a quality issue, I think, because...
Yeah,
the board is just so wide.
to go very wide.
But the pest getting in front of that is better than the pest getting in front of the cat, because the cat already in play won't be doubled.
Right.
So that would be at least one turn where he could maybe stop the soldiers from getting doubled, but hopefully just able to deal with the hero or the pride this turn. Stock up, found 2 cards. Okay, Lotus Cobra, Fast Bond, Fetch Land. Okay. So he's going to generate some kind of mana here.
Apparently not that he's interested in using, though.
Really?
Yeah, his hand is full, and he's not playing extra lanes with Fastbond, so...
And he just resolved Stock Up, so what did he pick up that isn't worth playing right now?
How well is he set up for interaction? Does he have, some options here?
Okay, well, there's Force of Vigor in Higgs' upkeep, presumably.
Yeah, so I have to assume that he felt he had to do this off of the stock up, and that's why he didn't have any gas for last turn. Presumably finding one of these 2 elements. Because if he had this last turn, I imagine the Soul Cauldron would already be gone when it targeted Jace, so...
Yeah, that sounds realistic to me. And it is worth noting, too, that Bryan, despite being mostly tapped out here, can get up to 4 mana potentially on this turn, so...
Right, he could have hard cast out if he wanted to.
Yeah, which means hopefully he's sitting on some other spell here.
Just 3, right? Lotus Cobra, land, and Fanatic Avernus. Right. But still, right. I mean, we know there's Fire Ice, there's Mana Leak. Oh, speaking of Fire Ice.
Oh,
and this
so we're going to tap the hero.
The hero, okay.
And this was after Higgs has targeted the Cobra with a Ballista token here.
Man, Ballista would have been a great one to get under that Soul Cauldron. Although I guess gone now, so maybe not so great.
Right, I wonder if Higgs drew it this turn, because if he had it last turn but was waiting to be able to cast it, I wonder how likely he would have been to have just cast it for 0 to get it in the graveyard to start fueling the Cauldron, or...
Yeah, I mean, he would have had 3 counters, so maybe not quite worth. Is still 1 short of City's Blessing here, fortunately for Bryan, but Still quite up against it.
Right, though if he just finds a big creature to shut down the attacks a little bit, his life total is still pretty high, not at any real risk from the ring and fast bond if he can just shut down some of these attacks.
Got something going on, it seems. 5 mana. Okay, Nissa.
I was really hoping it was the other 5 mana green spell.
Yeah, Titania.
Titania would even up this board so heavily.
Yeah, fetch land in the graveyard.
Theoretically, still could happen this turn, especially with his Ancestral.
Yeah. Just clarifying where our mana is coming from, I think.
Right.
It's 3 cards, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mana potentially available.
Well,
6,
we have
I
the
guess, with
additional
the floating.
green floating,
Yeah.
so. Haywire might not the most impactful thing in the world on this board, but not a 0.
Now, which land Bryan chooses to untap might say something about what spell he has, because if he doesn't have anything to do, then untapping a forest is the least committal. Untapping Sparas implies that he might have a mana leak, or I don't think he has any white instant removal spell, or he's looking to bluff either of those things in this case, which could be the state we're in, where even if he doesn't have anything, just making Higgs consider the fact that he chose to untap that instead of a forest.
Yeah, and if this land meets a swords or a path or something, we're not like losing out in terms of like the colors of mana we need to be able to produce. We have plenty of backups for all those other types. So I think just like presenting your opponent with the most options, hoping that they maybe read into something that you don't actually have. It seems wise here.
Strong point. Very low opportunity cost. No double white spells, I don't believe, in Bryan's deck, as we didn't get this Sky Clay for the Solitude we had been looking at one point.
Yeah, actually just Comet in the main deck, I believe, for actual white spells. I mean, Eagles of the North. If we're ever casting that, but
We'd cast it on this board.
yeah, it'd be something. And there's the Chariot.
Interesting, and we shocked ourselves putting that Sacred Foundry in play as opposed to tapping the Spars headquarters. So we either do want the additional blocker or want to represent instants still.
Spars headquarters rumbling. With a very brief visit to the red zone. Unlike Higgs's creatures that live there.
Free 3 damage against an opponent that is still over 20 life, so doesn't matter too much. But the Chariot does represent an increase to Bryan's mana next turn, though mana maybe isn't the bottleneck, though drawing 4 more cards off the One Ring. The ability to activate it to make Fanatic ferocious before having to cast any other spells might be relevant to next turn.
Here's Staff of the Storyteller, which quite the combo with Hero of Bladehold and Ocelot Pride for that matter.
All true, but all feels a little small ball for where we're at in this game.
Yeah.
Right. In Bryan's position, I'm thrilled to see this. The only exception would be if like Brian's life total was lower than the spirit starts to get scary, but it's only one spirit ever. The card draw, I don't think, can really keep up with Brian's card draw. I guess if he gets a second spirit off of the Pride trigger this turn, but that would imply the Pride has a good attack, which I'm not confident it does.
Yeah, sure doesn't seem like it does.
I think it's actually a fine attack because if he wants to block, he has to double block because of
Well, he could block with the Chariot though, which I guess is kind of a double block.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean if he wants to block with the Chariot, that's going to eat up essentially 3 of his creatures and let this army of smaller creatures get through, but he can't block with the land or even double block with the cats because you just use the walking ballista to deal 1 damage to something, and then first strike negates the entire block. Although this is the correct block, but
Oh yeah, I mean block and sack before damage, even like no life is going to be gained, so
right.
it wouldn't even trigger. Are we going after the staff, or are we going to take down the ballista? What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, the ballista doesn't really seem threatening currently. We don't have the cauldron anymore. I also believe that despite nothing being indicated here, the 2 cats are blocking the attacking cats as well.
also, Haywire Might says non-creature.
Oh, okay. Well, then that makes that easier.
Yeah, so Bryan actually targeted his Own the Ring, which it was on 3.
A little cowardly,
so,
but, you know.
So yeah, Bryan's dice also have him going down to 7 here. I believe he's going to 8. I think they may have counted the Battlecry trigger on the Hero of Bladehold itself, but such is life when you're tracking your life with dice.
Yeah, big slops to that one. Where's the pencil and paper, guys?
Thalia coming down. Probably not going to be relevant with this amount of mana, but I guess you never really know. Those ones can add up over the course of a turn.
Right, if the One Ring was still in play, maybe it's more relevant, but with Nissa, it's just so much mana that hard to see it mattering.
Yeah, so Tireless Tracker, land for turn.
Their mind looks somewhat relevant. Matt Higgs has not played a land in a couple of turns here, and it looks like he's much heavier white than green, so maybe taking him off potential double white cards.
Taking him off activating the staff so much.
The staff too, and ballista.
And ballista, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
oddly the turn, 10
options.
or 11 strip mine is pretty impactful still.
We need something else that feels to help out here because that Hero of Bladehold is going to outpace us pretty quick.
Yeah, especially in combination with Ocelot Pride, like the Higgs is able to just like throw his creatures into the red zone every turn, and they just get replaced without really any effort on his part.
He's placed a counter on the Nissa, implying that he's not using the mana from that card from the Sacred Foundry that he animated, unless he just verbalized that he was floating the mana.
Yeah, I mean, like we said, it hasn't been using fast bonds, so it feels like there has. Okay, well, there's that Eagles of the North.
And we tapped the strip mine, so that is not on his radar. It's not on his game plan here.
He might be wanting to hang on to the strip mine in case of Titania. Because, play Titania, strip to make a guy, get strip mine back.
Yeah, taking out 2 lanes in 1 turn is definitely could catch Higgs off guard here.
And we used our Fanatic of Ronus there since Tireless Tracker has 4 power now. Life total has gotten a bit more manageable, down to 17.
Right. 8 damage, I believe, off of the land creatures coming in last turn, but still don't love the position overall.
Yeah, interested to see what happens in the case of a just shove here, because again, there's no really good blocks for the Ocelot or for the Hero of Bladehold. Or even the Thalia at this point, for the same reason as Ocelot.
Maybe the most I've seen the keyword first strike be relevant in a vintage cube match
in a long time, for sure.
Right,
yeah.
because it was important on Bryan's attack as well that the lands had first strike off of the Eagles.
Yeah.
So heads up here, Bryan activating his Asika's Chariot to make his Otawara activation cheaper, so he doesn't have to tap either of his blocking lands. Gets the Hero of Bladehold off the table.
Nice, very nice play.
No change in number of blockers, but yeah, getting that hero off the table very, very cleanly. Just definitely makes the board look a lot better, just immediately.
Right, have to imagine that stunts the attack.
Yeah, way easier to just double block the Ocelot without an army of 1/1s or 2/1s, I guess.
If Bryan was already on this plan, though, I think he has enough 3/3s.
Whoa.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we'll see from this block.
Yeah, aggressive attack
Higgs
here.
disagreed here. Just heads up, we have add a counter to a walking ballista and then use them. So that is something Bryan needs to be thinking about when he's lining up these blocks.
It looks like he is cognizant of that a little bit.
Some slightly illegal blocking going on here, but if we swap
the
Eagles and
Eagle and the Sacred Foundry need to
it's,
switch places, but
they're basically interchangeable versus what they're fighting, and I believe it gets noticed here in a second, but just for clarity, that Sacred Foundry is not flying for any reason.
I think I would block the Thalia instead of the Soldier token, because if he wants to give up the Ballista, or I would block the Thalia maybe instead of the Ballista, because if he wants to give up the Ballista to kill the 3/3 that's blocking Thalia, then that means the Pride gets taken down. Oh, but if he switches the Chariot, that's not the case.
And yeah, still kind of the same scenario. Just the Sacred Foundry and the Eagles should be swapped here.
What is this?
So this is the new dinosaur cycling, puts 2+1/+1 counters on a creature and makes it indestructible. So pretty strong.
That's really
here
good on a walking ballista.
On the walking ballista, yeah.
Wow. All right, now we've got the correct blocks. But this ballista now is much more potent.
There is a line here that I think he could have taken with it becoming indestructible, which is shoot the Sacred Foundry so that the first strike actually kills it.
Yeah, I'm surprised he doesn't.
Still do the 2 combat points of damage and then use a second counter to kill the Sacred Foundry after combat, but as is the Ocelot dies. Yeah. There's a lot of moving parts here. Easy for me or us to see that from here, but
yeah, that was very complicated combat for sure.
Yeah. Again, first strike, turning every combat step into kind of 2.
It is, but like there were on board ways to keep the Pride alive, and I feel like, seeing the board so pared down, maybe the Pride isn't the main focus, but it kind of felt like it still would have been.
Maybe just a bit of resignation, though. Kind of a desperation attack there. Snapcaster, I assume, is targeting a call here, but I don't.
Yeah, we're tapping a lot more than that.
Know what is happening.
Is it a 4-mana spell then?
Oh, it's flashing back Pest Infestation.
Gotcha.
Okay, so yeah, sending the 3 upstairs. Having to pay the tax because of Thalia getting the staff and the ballista off the table.
This feels like a pretty clean win from Bryan from this point.
Yeah, I'm not doing
because
the math
we
here.
know
Math
Hero is
for
one of the
blockers,
cards in
not
hand. It
casters.
looks like a Plains. Is it 2 Plains and Hero in hand? Or is the Hero not in hand anymore? Did I...
The hero should be in hand still.
Okay.
Although I'm not.
No, I see it.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Feels like if Bryan had just attacked with Tireless Tracker, this was lethal.
I don't know what it looks like, yeah. Especially confusing given the 6 pests. Like, Higgs is not like coming in over the top of that, probably.
Yeah, so due to that mishap with the battle cry earlier, Bryan actually had his own life total at 1 there, so made that flying Thalia lethal. But
Oh, brutal miscalculation.
yeah, kind of a rough way to go there.
I mean, the back-to-back, like, potentially missing lethal, and yeah, that's a rough series of events.
In any case, though, while Bryan did have a powerful start last game with Fastbond ramping him, it didn't actually ramp him that much because Fnatic came down on turn 2 like it could have normally, and Higgs on the other side had a pretty fast start, which we're at least not seeing the Pride threaten to take over from turn 1 this game.
Yeah,
Oof.
but we started on Fastbond and then Strip Mine turn 2 and have not played another land since, so...
Yeah, and meanwhile, Higgs is playing Thalia, further punishing this unfortunate
Oh,
few
no.
draws after the keep.
Yeah, and Bryan just out of there after that.
All of that was going to say that I actually, given the way game 1 played out, feel like I would take Bryan as a decent favorite in the matchup, seeing as his deck maybe slightly underperformed game 1, whereas it feels like Higgs' deck maybe slightly overperformed. But if you're just stuck off mana, then that's the way it ends up. Unfortunate.
Yeah,
Well,
a bit of a tough way to go there, for sure.
Well, since this is an 8-man draft, I know we had several 6-mans recently, but since this is an 8-man draft, I believe that means we're sticking with Higgs into the next round. Is that right?
That is correct, and we can take a quick look at his deck here. A lot of cards that we saw already, a few that we didn't, though.
Okay.
But yeah, everything seems pretty well on theme with what we did see. Mother of Runes in there.
Ooh. Thalia, very interesting for a lot of the cards in this deck. Mentor, interesting. It looks like it does have a decent number of things that trigger it, but not that many.
Yeah, Felia, Wandering Emperor especially, a very strong pairing of cards.
Yeah, I've was talking with people about that for the modern Blink deck, just getting the double activation turn with Wandering Emperor. Powerful, maybe too showy for modern, but definitely excited if we can see it here. Not in love with this Mentor the more I look at this deck.
All in all, I think this is a very, very strong, very fair Vintage Cube deck. Bryan looked to be trying to do like slightly more powerful things. Didn't really come together, but I imagine an opponent that's really trying to break the rules of the game is going to have a pretty easy opponent in Higgs if that does come up.
For sure. Though it is cool to see white-green aggro here. Like, the new Dinosaur as an effective, like, just seems like a good pump spell. At least, maybe it's colored too much by the time that we saw it, but draw a card, 2+1/+1 counters, indestructible and trample. Yeah, that's a lot of text for 3 mana and replacing
Absolutely. And as we saw in that match, this deck is incredibly good at going very wide. I mean, and we didn't even see some of the other options. The Overlord, for one.
Yeah, Overlord, Mentor.
So I'm excited to see how the rest of Higgs's tournament goes, because that first match was impressive.
Yeah, let's get into the second match. So getting into the next match, it looks like Prose, you were Higgs' next opponent here.
Yep, lucky me.
You want to tell us about your deck?
No.
Okay.
My deck was kind of a mishmash of all the different ways that there are to put giant creatures into play without paying their mana cost.
Very interesting. We heard Bryan during the draft mention hate picking the Emrakul, but it had already made its way around the table, so in my opinion, there probably wasn't someone too dedicated to putting big creatures into play. Maybe you already had a bunch of big creatures by that point, who's to say?
Yeah, I opened on Flash in this draft, and I think 3 of the next 4 picks were just gigantic monsters. Atali, Torsten, Vaultborn Tyrant. So no real shortage of things. Here's a show and tell on turn 2. Of note, a legal fetch target there from Bloodstained Mire. Call me a cheater, it's fine. I do have the
Birds of Paradise is in
though,
play.
So.
Oh wait, would Birds have not been in play?
Well, the alternative was a Bayou. So Birds would have been in play either way.
A little surprised to see Higgs with no non-lands in play, but...
Well, yeah, well, there's the dinosaur, so...
Okay, wait, so how big is this thing? I only knew it's cycling.
It's actually bigger. It's an 8/8.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's so funny.
It is pretty funny. So Sentinel of the Nameless City from Higgs's deck, Flash from mine, which was kind of a relief because it didn't look it, but I did a lot of debating on the show and tell of which of these creatures to put into play. Chose to go with the Atali, which I am glad that I had, because had I just put this Woodfall Primus into play, the Rex would have been much more imposing, but the Flash letting me put the Woodfall Primus in, knock both of his lands out, and pass the turn.
Well, Higgs went from 2 lands and no creatures to 10 power and no lands, so I don't know what that means, but that's something that happened.
Yeah, and it's really unfortunate too that the Sentinel was the card from his deck that was hit. I mean, he has no lands, so even if but I can't actually attack into that dinosaur without the map token.
Interesting.
Just to make the Atali a little bit bigger.
Map token's also interesting with your Woodfall Primus, if that could be relevant.
Yeah, for sure. That's not an angle I had considered, but
seems unlikely to come up, but
right. Kicking off with Once Upon a Time in game 2.
The loading screen of Magic the Gathering.
Yeah. There's that Bayou. I wasn't lying about having it.
Can you imagine if you were? You just...
Yeah, I mean, specifically on that fetch, when I watched it back, I got the Bayou out and then went back for the breeding pool. I don't know the reason for that decision, but here's Skysteer Chariot, I believe, which is shutting off my Birds of Paradise. It's choose an on-land card name. Activated abilities can't be used unless you pay 2 extra for them. So,
right, the new Pithing Needle effect
is also a vehicle. 3/3 flying, crew 1, I believe, 1 or 2. Regardless, very rude.
So you mentioned lots of ways to put big creatures in play. Haven't seen red yet, which is normally one of the colors I associate with that. With the exception of, I guess, your fetch land that could have gotten red last game, but no actual red seen yet. Are you playing any of the red cards?
I do have Through the Breach. Yeah, it's the only red card in the deck aside from Atali, if we count that. But having
Terra Sunder.
Yeah, having to spend Terra Sunder on the vehicle.
Yeah, freeing up your birds too.
Mm-hmm.
Volcanic here, very good good mana from you. It's surprised, weren't you sitting directly next to Bryan? I don't recall. Like, obviously, we joked about some of the lands he let go, but I legitimately don't remember seeing too many of the lands we've seen from you go past him.
Yeah, I was 2 seats to the left of Bryan.
Two seats over.
And one more seat after that, I was drafting a 5-color deck, so there must have just been an abundance of lands in this draft.
Well, not that Bryan took. You probably got the ones we talked about Bryan not taking.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my
Yes,
44 or 45th pick in this draft was an Overgrown Tomb, so there were a lot of lands going around. So here's Flash for Woodfall Primus again. The Wandering Emperor, a pretty good answer. Doesn't get it off the board immediately, but is something that I likely would have liked to get off the board with the Primus.
Imagine that the Primus will be able to clean up the Wandering Emperor here. If that is still, something you want to spend time on. Be interested to see if Higgs, in light of that, just like takes out your bird here. I'm not sure there's a ton of value, but
I think he was considering it with the Wandering Emperor activation at the end of my turn, but
well, he could do it on his turn too, right?
yeah. Well, now it would get rid of the Emperor though, right?
Yeah. Well, the idea is that the Emperor is likely going to die to your combat.
Sure. Yeah.
But with Felia in hand, he can threaten a double block to keep the Emperor alive, and then Emperor threatens to take over this game with Felia next turn.
That is interesting. Yeah. Be a little scared of having to have like all of my creatures involved in this block, but
if Prose has more stuff this game, I think you're losing in Higgs' position no matter what you do.
Yeah, so a bit of a blunder here. I, in my brain, wanted this Collective Brutality to be an instant because it would be way better if it was.
Is not.
I was having that thought as you were doing this, yeah.
Yeah, so Higgs points that out, and so my Primus is just going to get chomped here. Unfortunate. Also kind of odd that I didn't attack with the Spellseeker as well. But still gonna cast the Brutality, not gonna double down on my mistakes, and we would like the Satali to be in the graveyard.
So we're killing the... Okay, and then it was the duress mode as well.
Yeah, duress mode.
Yeah, I guess if Spellseeker had gotten in, we could have... It would have looked like we could guarantee the death of the Wandering Emperor. Of course, Felia blocking it would have stopped that, but...
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, so now you're like pretty hugely on the back foot, it looks like.
Yeah, I mean, discarding the Satali, I'm not sure what card is in my hand, but I have a couple of different ways to reanimate things, so I have to assume that, although if one of them was there, I likely would have cast it that turn, so maybe it's just hedging for a future draw. So there's a Worldly Tutor, which I do have Metamorphosis Fanatic, so okay.
Oh.
So you discarded it on purpose.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It was
plan.
Hedging for a known draw, I guess. But actually, looks like getting the Primus back, not the Atali, because we can just take out the.
Right. When Atali hit the graveyard, you didn't yet know Felia was gonna make things very, very tricky with the Wandering Emperor. So it makes sense to adjust the game plan.
Got a life-linked.
Virtue coming down.
Mm-hmm. So putting up some resistance, not really anything this turn, but starting the turn after this, the board could be a problem.
Right. Primus presumably gets to attack here pretty freely, though, right?
Yeah, I mean, if he...
the Fanatic, too.
Higgs was under the impression that Metamorphosis Fanatic was a reasonable Magic card that put a finality counter on things, not a lifelink counter. Would be much worse with Woodfall Primus if that were the case. But yeah, just a clean 10 life attack here. Gain a bunch of life back.
Yeah, I mean, Higgs has the potential to make this board really tough for you, but it's going to take some time, and I'm just not sure that he has that time.
So yeah, responding to the Thalia with Occult Epiphany here.
And this threatens that now, if he doesn't leave up blockers, you're going to have enough flying threats to finish him off at a lower life total.
Right. Only one card in hand, so I guess it wasn't too hard that time, but we do hit the full 4 there with Nexus of Becoming, Swamp, Orcish Bowmasters, and Show and Tell. Another creature here would make things a little bit more troubling. I don't recall. I think just trying to decide if he wants to attack with the Samurai with Vigilance. Looks like he had unexpectedly
Yeah, it looks like he has an unexpectedly absent in the leftovers. I don't imagine he's going to target your Metamorphosis Fanatic with that.
No, probably not.
Be pretty cool if he did, but you know.
I think he just probably has to target the Woodfall Primus with it here. Which is way less cool from my perspective, so. Just Felia.
Yeah.
Blinking the... Or maybe not even blinking the Virtue. Doesn't actually matter. There's nothing relevant blinking here. Although he would have gotten another counter on Felia.
Right. Or could have blinked Thalia.
Either way, he gets
For the
another
same
counter
effect,
on Felia, yeah. Which would be slightly different because then the Felia could block this Woodfall Primus. Although, unbeknownst to me, I guess he has an answer to Woodfall Primus already.
But still, at 21 life, these spirits are threatening to just be what decides the game.
Yeah, essentially 2 more turns after this on the clock, even with the growing army. Wandering Emperor was just chilled over there for some reason. He tapped 4 mana here, and I panicked about Wandering Emperor, and then I remembered that it had died, but it wasn't in his graveyard, so we had to find it. So there's the Absent, putting it 2 cards deep.
Not wanting to put it directly on top because maybe you're not too far away from casting it. It doesn't feel like you're that close.
No. Here's Animate Dead, though, for Atali. Which, unfortunately, there was a non-land on top of my deck.
Still, from his position, it does seem interesting to choose not to put it just directly on top. Have to imagine it would have been a somewhat dead draw.
Yeah, I mean, that card costs 8, right? I have access to 5 mana. But, I mean, he also knows about Show and Tell, which he hasn't seen, so...
Fair. Like, you have ways to put it into play, but...
Mm-hmm. But yeah, Kiora, not the worst thing in the world. We definitely have Threshold. Get Agatha's Soul Cauldron from his side. I don't think somehow in all of these that there is a single creature with an activated ability in a graveyard, but just the +1/+1 counters. Yeah, I think he's just done with it from there.
Yeah, I mean, very cool deck to see. When you said put big creatures into play, and then we first saw Show and Tell and Flash, we'd seen the black mana, so seeing the reanimate effects are really, they make a lot of sense. But until that Animate Dead there, I guess the Metamorphosis fanatic, hadn't been that much looking out for the reanimator side of the deck. But taking a look at it now,
Yeah, like I said, pack one, pick one was Flash, which seems to be happening to me a lot this season. I would much rather pack one, pick one some power because I still don't think in the past like 6 weeks that I have seen a single piece of power. But
this deck is sick looking.
yeah, the draft after the draft, I will not lie, I was not super high because as you can kind of see it seems a bit all over the place on the surface. We started with Flash, we got some big creatures. Somewhere along the way, got into a couple of the reanimate spells, the green spells, bring to light. I took somewhere along the way, pretty early on, I think, just as a second copy of Flash, essentially. But yeah, I mean, I can't complain too much. It came together and a lot of redundancy, so a lot of different ways to get things into play.
I echo Joey's sentiment. I think this deck looks sick. I mean, obviously you would love Suboxone or whatever, but
Yeah.
you have a lot of pieces that all work really well together, and those decks are just a delight to play and to watch.
I agree that maybe your 22nd, 23rd playables aren't the greatest. Like, Kitza does discard stuff, but you only have one graveyard reanimate effect, so it's not like, and you have really good other discard outlets, so it's not like Kitza's necessary. Bronco is a card I'm happy to have in a deck, but isn't meshing super well with anything else, besides if you're able to dome your opponent with one of these massive creatures, but it's not exactly what I normally consider an all-star, but the top part of the deck, very cool to see.
Yeah, I will say I honestly have no clue why I let that Emrakul go by me, because I definitely had Through the Breach in my pile during that pack. So I don't really have a good answer. I mean, I guess it doesn't really fit with like Flash and Reanimate as much. I didn't have like Shallow Grave or anything, but I for the life of me just can't remember what I took over it.
From your construction, it looks like you were probably in on black fairly early, I'd assume. So, like, if you're thinking you might have a reanimation like side to the deck, it makes sense that Emrakul is not one of the cards you'd be looking for there.
So my opponent in the next match for the 3-0 is Spurlock, who actually on kind of a similar strategy, although on the kind of the opposite end of the spectrum with the mostly purely reanimator, but similarly to that, Through the Breach has a sneak attack just thrown in there for good measure.
But between him, Valky, Grief, Mind Twist has good Concealing Currents as well. Good disruption to break apart your A plus B combo. Emperor of Bones to eat the creatures out of your graveyard. So if he is able to get one of your creatures into the graveyard, it becomes a threat back the other way. And good aggro in the form of Gut, Death Greeters. I missed Deep Cavern Bat in the form of the disruption. So it feels like this would be pretty near nightmare matchup. And he does have some power in his deck.
Yeah, cheater.
Yeah, this deck looks very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. All bangers on camera this draft. Like, seeing a green slant on the aggro. I'm always a fan of the lands deck, and now just two powerhouse big creature decks. This one leaning more aggro. Very interesting way to set up the finals of this draft. Let's get into the match and see how exciting it can be. Okay, so we know we got two very explosive decks in terms of being able to end the game, just putting a big creature into play and getting the game over with. Spurlock has the added benefit of having aggressive creatures that could slowly get the game over, but honestly, if we see that kind of start from Spurlock, I'd be a bit in favor of Prose here, because then he could just have his big fatty and put an end to any of that momentum. Concealing Curtain's a little scary on the play, threatening to just disrupt something possibly the turn before Prose could get anything going.
Yeah, I don't remember what is in my hand here. I do remember being mortified of this concealing curtain, so presumably I have something to do on turn 2 or 3.
Interesting dynamic in this matchup here, given that you're both looking to put big creatures into play. So Prose's Flash, I think, is pretty safe. Spurlock can fight that with hand disruption, but if the card Flash goes on the stack, there's probably going to be a big guy in play briefly. The show and tell out of Prose's deck maybe is a little worse, given that Spurlock has, comparable, if not better, threats to put into play.
It's dangerous for sure, but Spurlock definitely has less of them than Prose does. So
I should also caveat that I had no idea what Spurlock is playing. I have not seen his deck play before this, so
sure. I'm just saying, as we're watching this match play out, these are sort of the things I'm thinking about.
Sure.
And it's a fair counterpoint to what I'm saying, though, that you don't know how few fatties he has in his deck, so show and tell would still be pretty scary to consider trying to resolve.
I guess Prose's Through the Breach is similar to the Flash in that if it's on the stack, it's probably going to work. But other than that, you're both looking to reanimate things, and so you have to be careful about what you discard and when, given that your opponent can just snipe it with their own reanimation spell.
So in the meantime,
lots to think about.
Spurlock transformed his eye. I flashed this Torsen into play, got 5 extra cards in my hand. And then he wisely takes the Animate Dead that he saw because very briefly attacks here, but I remind him that I have 7/1/1s and he
says, "Oh yeah, I actually don't want to throw my creature away."
So imagine we're getting in with all these creatures and playing Grist? Yeah.
Certainly looks that way.
And
there's a Grist here. Yeah, we're going to kill the eye before we attack. And then, yeah. Now it's back on Spurlock to try and do something impactful on this board here.
Right, all the aggro stuff like Gut, we were talking about, Death Graders, not looking impressive here, so got to find a way to get his Archon going, probably the easiest way to move on from here, though Grist even makes that difficult.
Fire Covenant, not a bad answer. I mean, costs him a bunch of life, but it costs him essentially 1 attack's worth of life, so...
True, still leaves him behind because Grist takes up creating a creature that can block, his best play.
Right.
Grist, truthfully, just seems like the thing that threatens to get in the way a lot.
But... So that Crabomination was discarded to Bitter Triumph. That wasn't Spurlock trying to pull a fast one or anything. And then reanimate, so... Prefers having a Crabomination to a Torsten, it seems. Which I can't say I disagree with.
Well, there's always a chance he can have both, right?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yep.
Chance he can have both, plus... I guess he knows most of what's in my hand, but has to assume that there's more big dumb monsters in my deck. So did not hit Torsen, but got a Grave Troll, so not a bad consolation prize, I guess you would call it.
Yeah, it makes your attack force seem a little less potent. Although, at 8 life, you might just jam anyway. We need a little more across the finish line, but...
So a few unknown cards here. Can't remember what's face up over there. I think one of them is a Spell Seeker.
Yeah, it looks like you were about to cast something that's double blue. Okay, maybe this is just the Spell Seeker.
Yeah, Spell Seeker. Which is going to get that Worldly Tutor back that Torsten very rudely put on the bottom of my deck earlier. Worldly Tutor was quietly an all-star of this deck all day. It was a later in the pack pick and a card I considered cutting, but... especially with Metamorphosis Fanatic.
Yeah, that's a nice little one too, for sure.
For some reason, when you offered the cut to Spurlock on that last turn, it almost felt like, why bother? You're going to Worldly Tutor. Like, the way he reached for it just seemed so...
Uh-huh.
This doesn't matter. Interesting. I assume I would take this hit here?
Yeah, just take your lumps. Didn't really feel like trading all 6 of my soldiers in, because I don't think there's any way that you're only blocking with 5. Post-combat Gut, although I guess Gut isn't sacrificing either of these creatures, so...
Yeah, it feels pretty much just like a Gray Ogre.
Although, pretty interesting opportunity if he does have another reanimate spell to attack, sack it, and then bring it back on his next turn, but didn't have that opportunity this turn.
We ended up not casting the Worldly Tutor.
Huh.
Did you have a lot of Spellseeker targets, or was that kind of like the only one?
Worldly Tutor, Flash, Brutality, Once Upon a Time, Occult Epiphany. So there were a few all good in different situations, I feel. Mostly it was there for Flash, but...
Well, then it's surprising to Spellseeker for that one, and then not cast it.
Well, we had already cast Flash this game. Not the other ones, though.
Yeah, but in this position, if we were going to be in this position a turn cycle later, the Epiphany seems like a much more appealing pick, but obviously maybe considering multiple options.
Mm-hmm. So Death Raider's coming in. Cast, not dash. Which I believe is what that check for me was, to see if it was staying or...
Threatening quite a bit of damage, although I imagine probably just going to chump block whatever gets the Death Greeter.
Well, but if he puts it on the Troll, that makes it harder.
Well, I mean, you have to throw more creatures into the Meat Grinder, but, otherwise, if you don't do that, you die, so...
For sure. I'm just saying, like, it's not... It is a pretty meaningful hit to the resources.
I don't hate this, though. I don't hate putting it on Gut. It makes it another creature that's hard to block, and is going to deal a pretty relevant amount of damage. So I believe I'm telling him that I'm going to fetch a Bayou and play this Worldly Tutor here.
Oh,
yeah. So
this is cool.
Yeah, so we Worldly
wow.
Tutored the Metamorphosis Fanatic, used the Waterlogged Grove to draw it, and now we're going to reanimate Torsten.
Oh, I'm so sad I didn't see that.
This was actually
that was beautiful.
I told you on the day that there was a play I wanted to tell you about, but I would rather it wait until video, and this was it until commentary.
Yeah. I'm glad you didn't tell me that. That was worth the wait. That was very cool.
I still didn't even see the land in play at the time. When you said Metamorphosis Snack, I assumed there was a Occult Epiphany for 1 incoming, but okay.
Yeah, which turns this attack quite on its head. The 2 lifelink creatures. I don't even know that we care about the Troll attacking at this point, but I guess it's going to block anyways.
At this point, I kind of want to just put 2 more soldiers on that Troll.
Yeah, that's what I was
same.
just thinking. If you're going to block, you may as well block with enough to kill it at this point.
But... Yeah, and not that, like, I don't think that's going to turn the game or anything, but, kill the Troll.
Although I guess...
So, very nice play.
Well, no, it would have been a lethal attack regardless of if 2 more soldiers died, so... Yeah, not really a good justification for that block, if any. And yeah, that's enough to get it done. The ambush Torsten.
A very cool back and forth game 1. Prose was in the lead at the beginning. It felt like Spurlock was clawing it back. Hopefully get just as much interaction here, as we've had at least one game of each of the previous matches that was not really much gameplay going on, so
Yeah, I
hopefully...
kind of felt like I snuck away that first game because, like I said, I had no idea what he was playing, and just putting Torsten in my graveyard and not having it just get reanimated and bite me was a pretty big relief.
Yeah, I wonder how that game develops if he does reanimate Torsten instead of that Crabomination. You know, he doesn't also get that second creature, but maybe
But he's
the
got a
cards
good
he
number
gets
of
off Torsten.
creatures. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be a totally different game.
So that's a Sylvan Caryatid and Kiora.
Was that show and tell still in the deck after sideboard?
There's a show and tell in my hand. I had almost no relevant sideboard cards.
That's fair. And like I said, I don't think it's terrible in the matchup, but...
Yeah, I was also mostly of the opinion, again, all I've seen is Crabomination. I was mostly of the opinion that my show and tell creatures are almost certainly better than his. Outside of like the Emrakul that I knew was in the draft, there was also a Worldspine Wurm in the draft. Those two obviously are very spooky, but haven't seen either of them. So don't love casting show and tell, but willing to do it if I need to. There's
seeing
also
him with normal reanimation effects means he is maybe less likely in your mind to have either of those.
Right.
It seems justifiable since neither of those work with normal reanimate.
Yeah, so we do have access to Worldly Tutor and Show and Tell next turn. Making Valky a little bit scarier.
Seems worth going for? No. Okay, interesting.
Oh, I remember this. Yeah, so we did decide to cast the Show and Tell. And I specifically remember saying here, as long as you don't have Worldspine Wurm, it's fine. And here we are. Yeah, so we Show and Tell in the Nexus of Becoming, which lets us Worldly Tutor for what we want now, and keep the Nexus in play. So we got a Tali.
Do we have outs in our deck at least to this very large green trampler?
We have Terrace Under.
Grist, sort of.
Grist, sort of.
We know Spurlock's deck has Bitter Triumph.
Having a bit of a moment with some tokens here, it seems. Don't really know what was going on there. Alright, Lotus Petal.
Lotus Petal from Spurlock.
Okay, so Spellseeker can go get the Terrace Under.
Okay.
Can't cast it here, though.
Yeah, and you know, pretty scary. Just
Especially
some removal from Spurlock could mean a lethal attack.
Well, I think it's a lethal attack anyway, because the dinosaur is only at 3/3 right now, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's just not enough toughness to live until the next turn.
Yeah.
And the pedal doesn't let us cast anything new, so looks like this should be a lethal attack if everything comes in.
Yeah, like I said, when I was thinking through this this keep and that turn, Worldspine Wurm was about the only scenario. I don't even think like I don't even care about Archon. I don't care about like Gristlebrand. But yeah, it's like exactly Worldspine Wurm or Emrakul that shuts us down, and unfortunately he had the Worldspine Wurm, so I don't even think he needed to cast that Bitter Triumph. I think you guys are right on the math, but
The Atali's technically exiled, right?
yeah. I just pulled it out of the sleeve rather than use the copy token because I foolishly was of the opinion I was going to activate that card more than once that game. And you did point out that we had one non-game in every match, so here we are.
That one was at least interesting, like it was off of your show and tell.
Yeah, I mean, you did the thing you were trying to do. It just didn't pan out. It wasn't like nobody got to play.
I like hitting Spellseeker, made it kind of interesting.
So both on mulligans here, it looked like. The Spurlock undoing his kind of quickly. Very unfairly playing his Mox Ruby that he drafted.
Really good opening from Spurlock, but can he keep that pressure up here?
Right. I mean, this threatens, if he has a reanimate and a fatty, he can do that. Or if he has just a creature, like if he had gut, sacrifice one of the artifacts, be swinging for a bunch of damage this turn. Lots of scary options.
Yeah, and instead
has nothing.
Yeah. Well, he may have an instant. We're not done with the potential
with the turn cycle, but
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what I've got in my hand, but an uncharacteristically slow start. Just a Kiora here. Nexus and Caustic Bronco, so...
Interesting. No black mana to have cast the Bronco earlier if it had been in the hand. Discarding it may be a sign that there still is no black mana, or we're just past the part of the game where Bronco would be one of the appealing plays.
Spurlock was reaching for a swamp here, but I'm not sure. Okay, it looks like we are going to play something here. Oh, Opposition Agent.
Opposition Agent, okay. Which is a card that I saw in the draft, and at one point, when I was putting together that Worldly Tutor Metamorphosis Fanatic turn, was very aware of, but he tapped below 3 mana, so I was not. I also don't even know. He said it came in out of the sideboard, so it probably wasn't even in his deck that game, but does have a fair bit of play versus me, though, with Fetch Lands, Worldly Tutor, Spellseeker. Just going to take out the Kiora.
It sort of felt like the thinking about that on your end step was, do I want to save this and try and actually get something, or do I just want to start attacking him? And it seems like he decided to attack you.
You realize he forgot to discard first, but no big deal. Yeah, I mean, and I don't hate to just put more creatures into play. I mean, I've done nothing, essentially, in 3 turns. Played a creature that was removed, so...
Yeah. I believe we saw Spurlock discard a swamp there and maybe still have at least one more land in hand, so the hope here is that he doesn't have too much more action to immediately follow.
And that seems like what's going on here. Maybe like a removal spell that doesn't really have a target yet.
Can't really see what's going on in either hand right now.
Relic, an interesting choice, presumably out of the board.
Yep, but just going to pop it right away.
Alright, so responding with a Bowmaster.
Oh, that's nice.
From body language, I would assume Spurlock's considering responding with a removal spell, but maybe that's not the case. No, yeah, remove the Bowmaster so it doesn't get the chance to finish off the opposition agent.
Mm-hmm. So dismember.
He gets to draw the card. Opposition agent has 1 damage on it.
Oh no.
Yeah, still crunches in. I tried to get him to take it back, but he wouldn't.
Oh, really? I heard it was the opposite. I heard he tried to take it back and he was a real stickler for it.
Now that I know is definitely not true. So,
oh, is this miracle? Just natural miracle?
Well, the problem here is that we're going to realize in a second that all of these cards are actually exiled. We get a little bit mixed up in our...
There was a lot on the stack.
Relic of it all. Yeah, so...
Hey, I still think you play it. It's big.
Yeah, he's clearly out of action.
Oh, play it, play it, play it.
I think the only reason that I chose to decline is that I'm 1 mana away from just casting it if I need to. And presumably
you could just cast it now for 2 mana.
Have other things I want to do here. If I don't spend all my mana this turn, I think maybe it would have been better. Yeah. Here's Spellseeker for. Didn't even
Which
see
spell
what that
was
was
that?
for. I think it was Occult Epiphany. Yes, Occult Epiphany. So yeah, at this point, no reason not to have just played the guy. That was us realizing that the opposition agent should be in the graveyard.
If you have a creature you want to reanimate, though, in hand, you can Epiphany for 1 on his instep and then untap and likely Fanatic, correct?
But
But doesn't seem to be the plan here.
You could also just like Epiphany for the full amount this turn, and with the plan of the next turn casting your Fanatic. It's you're under no pressure, so you can like take your time and really set it up.
Here's
Grist.
Grist.
I was talking about it game 1 like it felt like one of the most important cards in the matchup. I still feel like this insulates us against some of Spurlock's more
For
unfair
sure.
ways he could try to claw back into the game.
Spellseeker getting in the red zone. Yeah, I mean, Grist definitely feels really, really important here. I mean, it puts cards into my graveyard. It potentially clears off most of his threats. I don't really want to be Gristing a Worldspine Wurm, but I am more likely to be able to deal with 3/5/5s than 1 15/15, I guess. We're just in casting our creature's territory now, it seems.
Grab and hope mode.
Oh, and now if he hits the Fanatic, that's brutal.
Oh.
Yeah, so hits the Fanatic. Although he has Opposition Agent in his graveyard, so yeah, pretty brutal. Although I think
I still
I'll wait and
feel
see,
your
actually.
advantage in this position, but definitely not by as much.
It felt like one of the best things that maybe could have happened as a result of that crab, but still not like devastating. Like now we're still playing a game.
So I think I know what's... Yeah, okay, so this is the turn I was thinking of. So I was actually really happy that he hit that Metamorphosis Fanatic, because I also had Animate Dead in my hand. So I get to kill the crab, Animate Dead the crab, and then it's my turn to cast his spells. Although he has no cards in his graveyard, so the crab is a bit worse.
But he also only has 1 card in hand, and you're exiling
Yeah,
it.
that he made audible groaning noises when he had to put face down on the table, so... I don't know why I'm
keeping us sweating.
I don't know
on
why
it.
I'm hiding these, but I believe the card off his library was a land, and the card in his hand was Sneak Attack. So I now have a Sneak Attack in play, hiding up there at the top of the table. I promise it's real. I promise it's there.
That seems like a good thing for you to have in your Through the Reach deck.
Yeah, I was not unhappy about that.
Though it didn't get activated immediately, so I think our last card is not a large idiot. Or maybe it is, and you just didn't want to do it that turn.
We know Occult Epiphany is in hand.
Oh, okay, sure.
So this seems like Epiphany for a bunch. Leave up a red mana. Don't accidentally crack Bloodstained Mire.
Thinking about just taking out probably the 4/4 here. Although I guess if we take out the Opposition Agent, we can use our fetch land. But
I do actually really like that.
yeah, ultimately deciding that I think I'm just going to try to keep Grist in play. And I think the play is that you just keep Grist in play until we think we have a kill shot, essentially. the crab's a 4/5 now, so it's not even really racing the 4/4. Yeah, so we did crack the Bloodstained Mire. We did forget momentarily, and then he unforgot. He's also cracking a fetch land. And then he attempted to repay the opposition agent, or the one of the takebacks from earlier, and I told him no. This is karma for the opposition agent attack, so we let it happen.
Also, such a flashy toss of the deck onto the battlefield.
Yeah, I definitely didn't intend it to come off as like dramatic as it was. I believe the only targets here are Bayou and the Jund Triome. But he doesn't get to put it into play right now. He can play it on his turn. I guess we are in his end step, but you can't play lands then, as it happens, so. So yeah, I'm going to cast that Occult Epiphany.
You gotta feel like even with the mistake, this could still just put your hand in a position where it's lethal thanks to the sneak attack that we swears in play, for sure.
3 lands and a Bring to Light.
Bring to Light, yeah, so only 2 spirits off of that one. Which isn't nothing, but he has 2 lifelink creatures in play, so...
Yeah, but one of them is probably dying this turn to Grist, so...
2 mana, so not immediately reaching for that sneak attack activation. Maybe is this a collective brutality to see if the path is clear or something?
Yeah, so collective brutality.
Okay. Kill the opposition agent.
Makes sense why we were thinking about it so long, though, to consider giving up the card in hand to take a look.
Yeah, so the tapping that for red mana. Spoiler alert, the card in hand is a creature, and I was considering escalating until I realized that this was an exact lethal attack if he had no cards in hand that mattered, so just decided to kill the creature, make the attack, and yeah, no response.
All right, so and Prose completes the 3 and
we cleared the hurdle. Yeah. To say it's been a rough few weeks for me is kind of an understatement, but yeah, it felt really good to clear out on this one, especially with a deck that coming out of the draft I wasn't the highest on, but maybe unfairly, I guess.
Well, I think you were just so resigned to your fate that it seemed like that streak would never end. And not only did it end, you shattered it.
It definitely felt that way. And now we just have to shatter the never opening power streak. That's coming soon for sure, right?
Well, I mean, I still want a lot of it, though, so...
Well, you'd have to show up to draft power, so...
Oh, so called out.
Yeah, I do think this is the 3rd time in the past few months that I've picked one Flash, and I would much rather just be picking power. I mean, I love Flash, don't get me wrong, and it's treated me pretty well so far, but yeah, overall, I think Caustic Bronco was the only card, through the Breach, I guess I never really played. Caustic Bronco was the only card that every time I drew it, I just wondered why it was in my deck, essentially.
Yeah, it's not too surprising, I don't think.
I mean, if you did get to mount it at any point and dome your opponent for 7, like, it would have felt so sweet.
And that's definitely the reason it made the deck, but yeah, it
especially because, like, you can imagine the scenario where that's like the only way you're winning this game is if you mount this thing and attack them, and you just have to like hit them for 7 off the top.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 cards in my deck that cost 5 or more, so it's not like a low percentage of the time that it's...
Oh yeah, it's a high enough percentage that I assume Caustic Bronco is not attacking unmounted in most matchups.
Yeah. I think it attacked I think I did play it actually once in my first match that wasn't on camera, and I think I did have a desperation unmounted attack with it that didn't kill me, but also didn't save me. But I think similar to game 2 of this round, I lost that game more due to how I used my cards than what was going on the other side. I got Douthie Voidwalkered out of that match or out of that game. So
Oh, geez. Thinking that the last matchup looked tough for you. So well thought through a lot of difficult matchups.
if I remember correctly, I actually used. I think it was either Grist or Terra Sunder to remove a creature that wasn't that Douthie Voidwalker, and then just like lost to it over the course of like 10 turns because it just couldn't do anything. But tough.
Managed
but,
to make that only one of the games, at least.
Yeah, exactly. Won the other 2 and then won 4 more. Feels good.
Congratulations, Prose. Well fought.
Thanks. I only had to cheat a little bit once to do it.
well,
For what it's worth, it didn't actually end up mattering as I justify my illegal fetch land.
right, still would have had the mana for the show and tell on that turn. Well, we'll try to clean it up a little bit for next time. I believe we might have a little bit of cube variety coming down the pipeline as well. So keep an eye out, and we will catch you guys next time.
So after that trio of matches, we have our winner for today's draft. Congratulations to Prose for taking down today's draft, gaining not only a 3-0 in the standings, but the right to add 1 card and remove 1 card from the cube for the remainder of the season. Prose's change today was to remove the Bane of Modern Nadu Winged Wisdom from the cube and to add Oracle of the Alpha in its place. So keep an eye out for that in any future videos that you see. You can always check out the Cube Cobra link in the description below to see a full list of all changes in the current season cube. That will wrap up our coverage of today's draft. As always, you can find links to our Discord, social media, and today's cube in the description below. Thank you for watching, and we hope to see you next time.